All right, welcome. We today are voting on the capital budget of the state of Maryland. We're welcoming our capital budget chair and vice chair. Gentlemen, welcome. Great work. Tell us what you've done.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and our full committee. I'm Delegate Malcolm Ruff, Chair of the Capital Budget Subcommittee, here to proudly present the favorable report on the Capital Subcommittee Fiscal 2027 General Obligation Actions. This proposed budget reflects our top guiding principle of ensuring the maximum return on the state's investment from a statewide equity lens. It is the product of thoughtful deliberation, balancing urgent public infrastructure needs with long-term economic growth, strengthening our schools and public safety facilities, and also revitalizing our communities. Our hard work has created a spending plan that strategically invests in Maryland's future. And I'd like to thank the hardworking members of our subcommittee, starting with our Vice Chair, Delegate Mark Chang, Delegate Gabriel Acevero, Delegate Catherine Forbes, Delegate Jefferson Greist, Delegate Julian Ivey, Delegate Ann Kaiser, Delegate Alethea McCaskill, Delegate Rick Metzger, Delegate Emily Shetty, Delegate Stephanie Smith, and Delegate Courtney Watson. I'd also like to thank Laura Hyde, who staffs the subcommittee. Yes, please give it up for Laura. She is tremendous, as well as our committee staff member, Addie Fleming, who has pitched in significantly to help us get this budget in shape. I'd also especially like to thank our budget analysts who have worked so doggedly to make sure that we have everything in place. Natalie Andrade, Sarah Baker, Catherine Barber, Scott Benson, Suveksha Bujel, Connor Brown, Andrew Gray, Emily Haskell, Matthew Klein, Naomi Komoro, Victoria Martinez, Madeline Miller, David Proppert, Samuel Quist, Yoshidara Rai, Micah Richards, Elizabeth Weibel, and Josh Weinstock. Thank you guys so very much. And I'd also like to thank Callie Ingerson, who formatted and edited this document. At the beginning of the document, there are charts that describe the miscellaneous grants program and local house initiatives. The subcommittee concurred with the technical amendments to miscellaneous project language. Of the governor's 61 miscellaneous projects, the subcommittee increased funding for 13 projects and decreased funding for 3. Of the Senate's 191 miscellaneous projects, the subcommittee increased funding for 33. The subcommittee also added 114 miscellaneous projects. The subcommittee also added 145 local house initiative projects. On pages 1 through 4 for the Interagency Commission on School Construction, the subcommittee concurred with the Senate to adopt 2 pieces of language specifying the methods for allocating program funds. The subcommittee also increased the authorization for the DeGrange Non-Public Aging Schools Program and added language specifying that MSDE shall prioritize awarding full grants to residential school applicants participating in the non-public placement program if more eligible schools apply and qualify for grants than the total authorization. For the Historic St. Mary's City Commission on page 5, the subcommittee concurred with the Senate on narrative requesting a report on site improvement program expenditures. In the Department of General Services on page 6, the subcommittee increased funding for the Revenue Administration Center modernization project that was added by the Senate. In the Department of Natural Resources on page 7 and 8, the subcommittee concurred with the Senate to reduce bond funding for 3 programs. This funding is replaced with transfers tax special funds in the operating budget. The subcommittee also concurred with the Senate to reduce bonds for a portion of the Waterway Improvement Program. Special funds are available to replace this funding as well. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services on page 9, the subcommittee modified narrative on the Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center, directing DPSCS to seek public comment on the current plan for BTTC and to include a summary of those comments in its report on reevaluation of the project. For the University of Maryland College Park campus, on pages 10 and 11, the subcommittee increased funding for a roof repair project and added funding for graduate student housing. On pages 12 and 13, the subcommittee added 2 projects for maintenance and security upgrades at Bowie State University. The University of Maryland Eastern Shore appears on page 14. The subcommittee increased funding for the new School of Veterinary Medicine and Health Professions project. For the University of Baltimore, on page 15, the subcommittee concurred with the Senate to add funding for property acquisition. On page 16, for the University of Maryland Global Campus, on page 16, for the University of Maryland Global Campus, the subcommittee increased funding for the renovation of the Adelphi Administration Building. For the Baltimore City Community College, the subcommittee added $1 million in funding for deferred maintenance projects on page 17. Turning to the Maryland Higher Education Commission on pages 18 and 19, the subcommittee increased funding for Montgomery College's theater arts building renovation and concurred with Narrative requesting a status report on unencumbered and unexpended funds. The subcommittee added funding for the Capital Region Medical Center project through the Aid to University of Maryland Medical System on page 20. The Department of Housing and Community Development appears on pages 21 through 32. The subcommittee concurred with the Senate to increase funding for 2 programs and restricted funding for specified projects in 6 programs. On page 31, the subcommittee also concurred with reducing bond funding for rental housing programs, which are fully funded using general funds in the operating budget. The subcommittee also shifted funding from rental housing programs to fund the Housing Innovation Initiative. In the Department of Commerce, the subcommittee restricted funds in the Arts Capital Grant Program for a specified project at the Clifton House, a cultural arts and literacy organization that honors the legacy of former state poet laureate Lucille Clifton. In the Maryland Environmental Service, on page 34, the subcommittee concurred with the Senate to reduce the bond authorization due to the availability of transfer tax special funds. Actions we took related to the Maryland Independent College and University Association projects can be found on pages 35 through 37. The subcommittee concurred with the Senate striking language requiring matching funds and increased funding for the 3 projects. The Maryland Hospital Association is on page 38. The subcommittee concurred with the Senate's funding level for the Frederick Health Hospital and Shepherd Pratt Towson campus. The local jails and detention centers can be found on page 39. The subcommittee increased the funding provided to begin the Queen Anne's County Detention Center project. On pages 40 through 77, the subcommittee concurred with 47 amendments to prior authorizations, including deauthorizations and termination extensions, and 22 pre-authorizations for fiscal 2028. The subcommittee pre-authorized an additional 5 projects. The subcommittee also has several additional items for consideration today, and I will turn to our analysts to describe those additional pages.
So moving to the yellow packet, page 1 is for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. This item strikes the language allowing the House and Senate to each direct half of the COT Priority Fund authorization, and it instead adds new language specifying the distribution of the funds by county and removes the matching grant requirement for fiscal 27. On page 2, item 2 for the Interagency Commission on School Construction breaks out $4.5 million from the Supplemental Capital Grant Program for the county with the greatest percentage of enrollment growth above the statewide average. And the action also specifies the method for allocating the remaining funds.
On pages 3 and 4 for the Department of Housing and Community Development, this action restricts additional funds for projects in the Community Legacy Program. On page 5, also in DHCD, this restricts funds for additional projects in the SEED program. Then on page 7, this action amends the section 111 of the capital bill to allow for the use of bond premium from bond sales in fiscal 27. Page 8 would add language requiring parking spaces to be allocated with restricted access in Calvert Street Garage. Then pages 9 through 13 are amendments to the state finance and procurement article that would repeal the 2-year termination for unencumbered capital grants for both PAYO and GEO bond funding, require annual reporting to the Legislative Policy Committee. It exempts capital programs from the 7-year termination, but maintains that for capital projects, and clarifies termination language. Finally, on page 14, this language amends language in section 1 of the bill just to conform to the modifications to state finance and procurement.
Mr. Chair, that ends the additional pages. Colleagues, as you've seen, our subcommittee's been hard at work making sure that this is indeed a huge and fortuitous investment in our state's future. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would move the adoption of the subcommittee report as amended.
Okay, subcommittee report's been moved. Is there a second? Second. All right, moved and second. Is there any discussion on the subcommittee report? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, raise your hand. Subcommittee report has been adopted. We now have to move any other discussion on the capital budget? And move the capital budget.
Move the budget,
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Moved and seconded. I would like to echo the chair and vice chair's thank you to Emily and Madeline and your entire team. Just done a fantastic job this year in a compressed schedule, and we appreciate that so much. Mr. Chair, I also want to congratulate you on a fantastic capital budget. Mr. Vice Chair, as always, great work that you do. So thank you. Okay, roll call.
Vice Chair Kaiser.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kaiser is a yay. Delegate Smith.
Yes.
Delegate Smith is a yay. Delegate Shetty. Delegate Shetty is a yay. Delegate Watson.
Yes.
Delegate Watson is a yay. Delegate McCaskill.
Yay.
Delegate McCaskill is a yay. Delegate Ruff.
Yes.
Delegate Ruff is a yay. Delegate Grist. Yes. Delegate Grist is a yay. Delegate Ivy.
Yes.
Delegate Ivy is a yay. Delegate Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Jones is a yay. Delegate Tolles. Delegate Tolles is a yay. Delegate Spiegel.
Yes.
Delegate Spiegel is a yay. Delegate Beecham.
Yes.
Delegate Beecham is a yay. Delegate Stonko.
Yes.
Delegate Stonko is a yay. Delegate Wolek.
Yes.
Delegate Wolek is a yay. Delegate Heinbaugh.
Yes.
Delegate Heinbaugh is a yay. Delegate Harrison.
Yes.
Delegate Harrison is a yay. Delegate Edelson.
Yes.
Delegate Edelson is a yay. Delegate Chang.
Yes.
Delegate Chang is a yay. Delegate Acevero.
Yes.
Delegate Acevero is a yay. Delegate Forbes.
Yes.
Delegate Forbes is a yay. Chair Barnes.
Yes.
Chair Barnes is a yay.
All right, we have capital budget. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't think we have any other business. We're adjourned.